Hector Ibarra. Good afternoon, everybody. My project is a binational citizen science platform for water quality monitoring, and I am a student from Texas A&M International University. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a little bit about me. I'm a little adventurous. I love going around, doing things that are out of the norm. I love a good challenge. That is who I am, and that is who I live to be, right? And the reason I mentioned this is it's going to be a little important as we proceed farther into the presentation. But the place I interned at was actually at the Rio Grande International Study Center. And I put two pictures here, so out the field and in-house. Out the field, there was a lot of work that we did in the community as well as with our river. So we're located in Laredo, Texas, which if you guys don't know, it's right next to the Rio Grande, bordering Mexico. And because we have that, like, I guess, river close to us, it is home, it is our culture, and we always go around and we try to base ourselves out of it. But in that, there's also a lot of politics as well as like environmental protection going into it, as our community is very susceptible to like large corporations as well as large like individuals who have the power to like establish themselves and not be regulated. So moving on to that, the responsibilities that we had was of course like the water testing that we was done one time per month, and then it was sent to a laboratory up in the States, as well as going around advocating in elementary schools, middle schools, podcasts, news outlets, even in Mexico where we crossed and we were basically announced in front of all of these like broadcasts in Mexico, right? So the following thing is what we kind of conducted, it looked a little bit like this. We actually had to get in the river and collect the samples ourselves and make sure they were adequately placed in as well as packaged. It might not look like a big deal, but guys, promise me, like it was so steep and sometimes like it was fun. I felt like I was in my backyard, but it was a little scary at times. However, I do believe it opened my eyes to the beauty that was hidden between these two nations and like what a lot of people didn't know we have to ourselves as well. And then the next thing is community as well. I was out and about almost everywhere and every day. One thing that I loved is that I didn't know what the next day brought to me because that's just how like out there we were and how many things we were going to, right? And here are just a couple of pictures of me doing tabling events as well as going to our local city hall to talk to the city council. And then here at the bottom is a picture of the border, which is on Mexico side, right? And how it kind of looks like from the US looking onto their side. And moving on to my capstone project, what I wanted to talk to you guys more a little bit in depth and why I kind of sped it through it is as I was going and learning about these communities, I tried to understand what the Science Influences Project was trying to teach us and more in depth into it. And one thing that I observed was how do we bring this science as well as this educative part of the program to communities like mine who some students don't even manage to get out of middle school or high school. And I want them to value their community as well as the science behind it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and move you guys over here to this next tab, kind of off the track. So this is actually a website that is currently live and you can go ahead and visit. The purpose behind it was to advocate for all these communities surrounding the Rio Grande as well as in the US and Mexico side. It was a project initially started by the Rio Grande International Study Center called the Rio Research Roundup, where it collected around 50 schools in US and in Mexico, and it prompted the students to go out to their local water source and collect it via test kits that were sent from the nonprofit that I worked at. And in this, we were actually able to receive so much support as well as so much interactivity where we could have built something like this. So what this is a graded level map of all the locations of where these students actually went to go test the water sources. And for example, almost like an exam, right? From on the right corner, you kind of see a legend that says excellent, good, fair, poor, and very poor. As you can see closer to these closer to the river here in South Texas, a lot of these areas are actually in very poor condition, and we would like to advocate for them. So if I go ahead and click this, it actually tells us a full summary of all the information and where it was located. So this is Piedras Negras, Coahuila, and it was in Cuenca, which is basically the location and where the city was. It also tells us a lot of the measurements of what it was observed, as well as some other information, and the school and the teacher who did it. And the reason is, yes, it's important to have the statistical information, and yes, it's good to be able to visualize this data and know and how to filter it. But also, I wanted to remember that the people who I wanted to serve the most was the students and the faculty involved in it, the people who actually lived in these locations and had to drink straight from these water sources. So I was like, what better way to empower these individuals than to actually teach them what they're testing for and to teach them what they're learning and should be have learned like in their high schools and in universities, and have them understand the importance of their environment as well as the importance of advocating for it, because when you don't have these resources, it is very difficult to live and sustain life, as well as a lot of people here in this region are getting very sick, but they don't understand why. So there's two ways to understand this, beginner and advanced. We understand that students are going to be the majority of the people looking into it. So we have various like subsections of how they can learn, like dissolved oxygen and a little fun fact. And I tried my best to make it into little emojis so that they could correlate the best to it, because literacy is not something that should be like, it's a privilege here in some communities as well. And of course, a dictionary in case it's difficult to understand what these concepts are, but they're quite as important to understand like the statistical information. And of course, we also have an advanced section that actually talks about it more in depth to anyone who would like to get more involved, as well as fight for their rights to have clean water. And then, of course, um, in that there is also 15 years of statistical information that was basically frozen in this nonprofit. They had all the data, but it was all in numbers and in spreadsheets. And what we were able to give them was a visualization of all this information and an ability to digest it in a way that even if you don't understand science, you should be able to understand what is surrounded in your water sources, and how to compare it to other cities who have better infrastructure as well as better advocation for these water sources. So that was kind of the idea for it. And just to quickly go back to the presentation. That was the capstone project. The website is live right now, and it's connected to an application that is also on the App Store. And the Google version of it is soon to come. I'm still working on it, but the vision behind this is if we were to advocate it more, and we were able to make this like not only a binational but just a global workforce where people and students could go out and advocate for it. I think it would be great, and I think it could really transform the environment as well as the people living in it. Eventually, hope to look into the air as well as land. And moving on, I wanted to highlight a little bit about my journey and why I did this, and why growing up into something like this, it really is very impactful for someone who's a Mexican American. I also learned that through all of this, I failed so many times. I couldn't count so many times that I felt so down and I felt like it was not possible, and I kept on fighting for it. And I realized that this went beyond who I am as a person and beyond what I want to achieve, but it was a sign of strength within our community to show that we are capable of doing this and more. So this is just a little infographic of how it really went. And then, of course, I wanted to give a huge thankful, like, I owe these individuals in my life who are mentors everything. For my intern advisor, Martin Castro, who gave me the ropes and let me understand what I was diving into. And he gave me the freedom and flexibility to want to do whatever I felt passionate about, as well as my professor, Dr. Sandaraj Vijayan, who was the first individual who prompted me to go into this direction and even think about doing this. And of course, a special thank you to Dr. Legge and Dr. Wingback and Dr. Costel, as well as the risk staff, Ms. Christy Bryan, Trisha Cortez, Ashley Garcia, Daniel Nicholson, and Dr. Beaker Angela. They inspired me so much, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. And yeah, if there's any questions or if anyone has anything they like to ask, I'm more than welcome to answer anything.